Hello Scaredy Cats, welcome to another story. Please subscribe and comment below 1 out of 5 what you rate the story. I bought an old doll from eBay because it looked like one my grandma used to have. The seller was quick to ship, and when the package arrived, everything seemed normal until that night. As I was about to sleep, I heard a soft giggling sound from the living room. I thought I was imagining things, but then things got weirder. The TV would turn on by itself, and I'd find the doll in different places from where I left it. I tried to contact the seller, but their account had been deleted. After a week of sleepless nights, I buried the doll in a box far from my house. The strange occurrences stopped, but I still avoid buying anything old from eBay now. I found a vintage camera on eBay that I really wanted. The auction was competitive, but something was off. Every time I placed the highest bid, within seconds I'd be outbid by another user. This went on for hours, way past the original closing time of the auction. I contacted eBay, confused about why the auction hadn't ended. They told me there was a glitch, and the item had actually sold hours ago to another buyer. But the bidding war cost me a lot in stress and lost time. I learned to double-check auction times after that and to not get too caught up in bidding wars. I sold a rare book on eBay, and it was a smooth transaction, or so I thought. A month later, I got a chargeback on my PayPal from the buyer claiming they never received the item. I had proof of delivery, but when I checked the address, I realized I sent it to the wrong city. Turns out, the buyer had 2 addresses on their account, and eBay selected the old one by default. The book was lost, and I had to refund the buyer, losing the rare item and the money. Now, I always double-check addresses and confirm them with buyers before shipping. I bought what was advertised as a brand new smartphone at a great price. When the package arrived, it was just the right weight, but inside, instead of a phone, there were just a bunch of metal washers taped together. The seller had a high rating and many positive reviews, which made me trust them. I tried to contact them, but they vanished from eBay the next day. I filed a complaint with eBay and got my money back eventually, but the hassle and the feeling of being tricked stayed with me. I bought a set of old comic books from a seller who seemed nice at first. After the purchase, though, they started sending me messages. At first it was about the comics, but then the messages got personal. They asked where I lived, if I was married, and even what times I was home. It got so creepy that I had to report them to eBay and block their account. I never responded to their personal questions, but it made me really cautious about the information I share online. I found an amazing deal on a set of collectible action figures on eBay. The seller had impeccable reviews and the photos looked great, so I didn't hesitate. I won the bid, paid promptly, and eagerly awaited my package. A week passed, then 2, with no sign of my figures. I reached out to the seller but received no response. Checking their profile again, I noticed it had suddenly gone blank, no items, no reviews, nothing. I contacted eBay, and they started an investigation. Turns out the seller had scammed multiple people this way and then disappeared. eBay refunded my money, but the disappointment of losing out on what I thought was a once-in-a-lifetime deal still stings. As an art collector, I was thrilled to find a painting by an artist I admired on eBay. The seller claimed it was an undiscovered piece, and the auction was fierce. I ended up paying way more than I initially planned. When the painting arrived, I was ecstatic until I took it to an expert for appraisal. It was a fake, and not even a good one. The signature was all wrong, and the materials used were cheap and modern. I felt so betrayed. I managed to get my money back through eBay's buyer protection, but the lesson was learned: if something seems too good to be true, it probably is. I bought an old car from eBay Motors that was listed as lightly used, and in perfect running condition. The car looked great in pictures, and even in person when it arrived. However, the first time I took it out for a spin, it broke down. I took it to a mechanic who told me it would cost more to fix than I paid for the car. I tried to reach out to the seller, but their account was no longer active. After doing some digging, I found out that the car was known locally for being cursed. Previous owners reported accidents and unexplained malfunctions. I ended up selling it for parts. Never again will I buy a car online without seeing it in person first. I sold a laptop on eBay, making sure to wipe the hard drive completely, or so I thought. A few weeks later, I started receiving emails from the buyer. At first, they were asking for tech support, but then they started quoting personal emails I had written years ago. Horrified, I realized I hadn't wiped the laptop as thoroughly as I needed to. The buyer threatened to expose my private emails unless I paid them. I refused and contacted the authorities instead. The situation was eventually resolved, but the violation of my privacy left me shaken and much more cautious about data security. I purchased a vintage record player from eBay. It worked perfectly for a few days, playing old vinyl records with a sound that brought back memories. But then, it started turning on by itself at night, playing the same track on repeat until I got up to turn it off. Each night, it chose a different record, one I hadn't even played yet. I messaged the seller about it, and they simply said, "It prefers to choose its own music. None of my attempts to fix it worked, and it started to creep me out, especially when it played lullabies in the dead of night." Eventually, I sold it to another collector, warning them of its peculiar behavior. I still avoid buying electronics from eBay, fearing they might come with more than just wires and circuits.